website. So if you want to, is that showing up? If you want to do this again with folks, family members, community folks, you can. But basically there's thank you. There's an actual and a desired pie chart. There's a circle called actual and there's a circle called desired. And the next thing that I typically ask people to do, again, we're not going to do this right now, but this all is on the website for you to do if you want to and when you want to, is to take your time, the way you take your time, and divide it into these 4 categories. How do I spend personal well-being, family, community service, and work? You can lump whatever, do it in the manner that's most meaningful to you. You can put into each section whatever makes sense for personal well-being, family time, friends, you can put in there whatever you want to do, community service, work. So put in the actual category, how you feel you actually spend that time. And you're making a slice for the time that you allocate the most, the time that least, and you're labeling that, right? And then the next part of that activity is to look at that and say, am I happy with this? Is this how I want it to be? Does this reflect who I am, what I want, and my life's purpose? If not, what would? And carve it up with your desired piece, right? Does that make sense, Simon? Good. And then once you do that, then there are some reflection questions. You can journal about this. These questions about noticing whether there are any discrepancies into how you're actually spending time and how you desire to spend time. Within that, then what do you see as your locus of control to change? Where might you make different choices? And your values tie into this. How does this reflect what you value? How does this reflect your journal questions as you reflect on who you are, what you want, and what your life purpose is? What do you feel about this? And what thought or feeling or belief can you let go of if your actual doesn't reflect your desire? Okay, welcome. Does that make sense? And then where can you build in overlaps? Like for me, a lot of my personal well-being is spent with friends. Not all of it, but some of my personal well-being time is spent with friends. Some of my personal well-being time is spent working because I feel like I'm living my life's purpose. I feel so fortunate. Or community service. I feel like this is my work. It's also volunteer. It's community service that overlaps. Right? Okay. So think about this, and then think about how you can bring more of your intention of who you are, what you want to do, what your life purpose is, into your pie chart. Again, all this, no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong in all of this. All of it is done is just to bring our attention and awareness into the choices that we make. Questions on that? Thoughts? And then some more, if you want to do this again with your community, your work community or your family community, then you can share some public reflections. The whole point of this, again, is this why we call it the love curriculum, right? It's acceptance of self, union of self. That's the whole point of this. And we have a lot of neuroscience that informs this curriculum. We have a lot of psychology. We have a lot of learning and development theories that we're using that undergirds this curriculum. Attention, emotion, cognitive regulation, design. But it is to bring about awareness of what we're thinking, what's happening in our mind, what in our intellect. Not saying that's bad, and not making judgment. That is just, it is what it is. All these thoughts I have all of the time and sometimes all together, that's just who I am. Right? What's happening with my body? What do I feel? Like Angelina was saying, I'm stopping to breathe and I notice my ankle hurts. Gigi's saying, I notice that I need more rest. than I thought I did. No right or wrong. Bringing attention. Bringing all this together, and our spirit, feelings, what we're sensing, what we believe in, all of that, bringing it back into discovering who we are becoming, what we want. So making choices to allocate our time to move toward our life's purpose. Does that make sense? Questions? Right. So the idea then is that the mindfulness breathing really creates space. We talked about the physics of that I'm conditioned, I'm going to use my eye language, I'm conditioned, I've been conditioned to know how to show up in higher education. And I got rewarded for having a mind that goes like this, thought, right? So when I began to practice mindfulness breathing, it created some space. Focusing on my breath, even though that is a thought, it's not one of these thoughts. So then it was thought, breath, thought, oops, I'm thinking, breath, thought. Right? And what happens then, as we know, then that actually changes the structure and function of the brain. Thickens the prefrontal cortex. What else does it do, Matthew?
Lots of things.
Lots of things, yeah, lots of things. It's in our paper. Okay, it's on the video. But then I create the space, so then guess what? I get to, instead of being, thought, I'm completely out of control, I'm out of my mind, it's just thoughts, space, I could choose this next thought. Space. I can choose the words that come from that thought. Space. I can choose the action. Isn't that fun? So that's a very brief and reminder about what we are trying to do through mindfulness-based breathing, is that then we move through the day with, here's a thought, breath, and not that we're literally taking a breath, but what we're doing by practicing mindfulness breathing is then we're reconditioning our brain to recognize I have a choice about the words that come from this thought. Or this thought is still not a thought I want to speak on. Because the thought that I'm having right now isn't in alignment with who I am, what I want, and my life's purpose. So I'm going to choose a different thought that is in more alignment. Isn't that fun? And then I get the thought that is in alignment with who I am, what I want, and my life's purpose. Then I can choose the words that align. And after the words, then I can choose the action. Questions, thoughts on that? Yes.
Just one thing. How do you deal with time? Because I'm an anxious person, so I feel like I'm taking too much time to think and to put into words and action.
Yeah.
I feel like I got to do it right now.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to lose it. So it's
good. Can you hold that thought for a moment, because we're going to practice Byron Katie's inquiry process. Because right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but right now I hear that the thought that you're having is, I have no time for the space in between thoughts.
right.
Is that, did I hear you correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So that's a thought that Gigi has. Let's hold that, because we're going to use that thought and practice some of this inquiry piece around. Okay, good. And all these thoughts that you might have, thoughts that you feel might be keeping you from practicing this, because the course is about just learning to practice. And then if you choose you don't like it, doesn't work for you, No worries. Let it go. Good? Okay. So the idea, though, is that, in your book it talks about karma, and karma really is action or choice. It's Sanskrit, meaning action or choice. Again, Sanskrit, not a religion, ancient language, not a religion, not even a spirituality, it's a philosophy, it's a practice. So the idea here is when you hear people like, oh, that's bad karma, it's good karma, what we want to do is influence karma. And really what this is choice making. Karma is choice making. Okay, I'm looking at Gopa to make sure I get this right. Okay, because remember, I'm teaching what I'm learning, right? So
I don't know anything.
So the idea is we have a desire, or as Ming talks about it, we have an intention. And we put our attention on intention, desire. We have a desire. It creates a thought, it might create a word, it might create an action. And that action creates a memory. And that memory then creates another thought or desire, right? And that desire then goes back to this whole thoughts, words, actions, right? All of this stuff, and so you can see this cycle that people may unconsciously, and I know we think about unconsciously being out or sleeping or whatever, but I think about, you ever go through a day and you're like, where did I put the keys? Well, basically, we unconsciously put them someplace. We weren't really present. We might as well just have been passed out, Or something comes out, you're like, wow, I didn't even know I said that. I don't really remember. That's why I joke around calling it unconscious, not mindful, not thoughtful. So the idea here is that we have this whole memory, desire, action, all of this stuff. And what we're trying to do with we're trying to make conscious choices around this. Trying to break this chain. If it's not creating memories that align with who you are, what you want, and what your life purpose is. So we're in the intention setting, in the who am I, what do I want, what is my life purpose, that's our intention setting. We're doing that, doing the mindfulness breathing, and then the idea is that that creates the space, that contributes to the space in between thoughts, and then we're beginning to make different choices. Does that make sense? Okay, so so this is the Byron Katie process. And what I'd like, I want to illustrate, if I could, with Gigi's question. And then I'd like for you to practice just writing a thought that you have and going through this process. And then we'll move to the conscious choice making piece. So the idea here is, thank you, Gigi, for volunteering. This is Gigi's thought. I have no time for the space in between thoughts. Does anybody else feel that? Yeah, certain settings. I just didn't want to be with this silence, so so whatever it is. So I have no. Now let's apply the Byron Katie's process. Is that true? You need to answer with a yes or no only. Is that true? Do you have no time for the space in between thoughts?
No.
No. Okay, great. Okay, no. That isn't true. And sometimes I have a thought and I think, is that true? Like, I used this example from last week. That guy's being a jerk. Is that true? Yes. Everyone in the restaurant is going to agree with me on this one. Right? But then I had to ask the question, do you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's true? No. I don't know that he's being a jerk. I had no idea he hadn't slept for 36 hours. Right? He's not being a jerk. He's acting like a person who's sleep deprived. Right? So the answer to these first two questions are yes or no. Not yes but, no but. Okay? Now ask yourself, who would you be without this thought? Who would you be without this thought, Gigi? How would you feel if you didn't believe that this were true?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. Well, I'll just use I'll flip it, and because I don't have time for this, fill in whatever this is. I don't have time for this. Who would I be if I don't believe that's true? When I use this process on that, whatever this is, I immediately relax. I can feel my anxiety decrease. When I believe that I don't have time for something specific, I immediately relax. I immediately start breathing again. Because that was just a thought. Science would say there's no such thing as time. We've artificially created it. We've artificially created these segments of time to manage action. Now, it is true that well, we won't get into that. It's another. So, but who would I be if I feel that this is not true? Now, conversely, who would I be if I thought that this was true? If I feel like I don't have time, when I do this, and then my anxiety just skyrockets again. I don't have time, I don't have time. Woof. So, the idea from Byron Katie, and there's a lot more, there are worksheets around this on her website. You can download them for free. And what I really like about this, the whole point of this is to just say, now which thought do I choose? Based on how I feel. I don't know about you, but most of the time, not always, but most of the time I choose the thought that feels better. Sometimes I actually choose the thought that feels miserable because for some crazy reason I want to be in misery. I don't have that part of me figured out. You know, I want to feel like a victim. I don't know why this feels lousy. I want to feel lousy. And then then some whatever is up there goes, this is really stupid. like quit feeling lousy. You can choose differently. Choose a different thought. Because I don't even know if that thought was true anyway. So why am I acting as if it is? Isn't that fun? Isn't that empowering? Right, so what I'd like to do, before we move on to the second part of this, is I'd like for you to journal. Choose a thought. And then go through this process. Is it true? Do you know beyond a shadow of doubt it's true? Now ask yourself a question, okay? Choose a thought and journal on these questions.